So my last main job before I went into the ministry, I was running a landscaping company, and we had a pretty decent size operation, about 70 employees on my side of the company. And I went and I worked some pretty big jobs. We actually had some pretty big commercial parks that we were doing, and one of these newer parks that I was helping to install, we probably put in 4,000 or 5,000 trees along the sidewalks and the tennis courts and things like that. And with each of these jobs, you have a guarantee that those plants are going to live to a certain amount of time, or else I'll have to come back out and replace them. There's a part of it where I'm responsible as the installer. And one year I come out there, I get called by the landscape architect, who is a very young guy, fresh out of school, and he says, I need you to look at these trees. There's about 130 London plane trees that are dead and need to be replaced. And it's about February or March, and we had planted about 500 or 600 of these trees, so he has a reason to think that 130 or so of them are dead. And I go out there and I'm like, I really don't see any dead trees. Can you show me which ones you're talking about? And he went over and he grabbed a branch and he went and broke it, and he said, this one's dead. And I went, no, you're using the wrong test on this tree. London plane trees don't bend 90 degrees even when they're healthy and good trees. At that time of year, if there's no leaves on it, you have to scratch the bark on the thing and there's green underneath, you know it's alive. I show this to him, still no go. And I was frustrated because I knew better than this guy. He graduated from his schooling, and that gave him the authority to say, I don't care whether you know better, replace these 130 trees, and I'm obligated to do it. And I thought, this is terrible. It's frustrating. Oddly enough, my company made an extra $40,000 off of that, because when I went back to my nursery and said, I have to replace 130 London plane trees, he said, I actually overplanted those about 10 years ago. You can have as many as you want. Don't bring the other ones back. I went, okay. And I went and got 130 brand new ones for free, took the other ones back to my shop, and I sold them to customers for as cheap as I could, and we ended up making about $40,000 extra. Bad situation turned into something good. And that's part of what we're talking about this morning. We go through junk in life. In our story, the parable that the Lord told about the fig tree, he talks about fertilizing this fig tree. And that word isn't fertilizer in the original language. It is much more literally dung, and a much more colloquial version of that word. Throw stuff at it. Let me dig around it and throw stuff at it. That's what this reads in the Lord's Word. And sometimes life feels that way. We're stuck here and life is being thrown at us. And so it makes a little more sense now to me why this parable comes out of talking about terrible, horrific accidents or dealing with the pain that other people cause us. There are two things the Lord said to them. Do you think that the Galileans who had that tower fall on top of them at the pool of Siloam, this is an old story, they would have all known this. 17 people were crushed under this tower, and they all would have remembered this as a horrific event. And he says, were they worse sinners? These were their family members. Of course not. These were people they would have known. They were there. What about the blood of all of those people that Pilate killed and mixed with the sacrifices? We don't know this event, exactly what they're talking about, but something happened where Pilate is mixing the blood of these people with sacrifices. It sounds pretty horrific. That sounds like it's other people and their harms caused on us that we feel, doesn't it? Are we worse sinners because bad things happen to us? This is speaking to a way that people think, and a way that theologically people believed and often believe today. If bad things keep happening to me, I must be bad. I must be evil. I must be too far gone. We can feel pitiful. We can feel like the Lord forgot us, like there is no God. There's a lot of bad things when we just pay attention to all those bad things and try to explain it. What if We aren't going to get a happy answer until we've gone through the junk to see the result that the Lord is bringing about. And this does take a lot of faith at first, I think. Even that kind that we don't really like believing in, the kind where we don't have proof of it yet. The kind where we really do have to stick our neck out on the line and trust the Lord has a plan. I'm going to trust that because He tells me so in His Word. I know the thoughts I think towards you, thoughts of a future and of a hope. He doesn't want ill for us. He doesn't lead us into temptation. He doesn't harm us. He doesn't cause bad things to happen. But He can use any bad situation, any hard thing that happens, to lead towards something good. I'm going to read from the Heavenly Doctrine for the New Church, from the work Arcana Celestia, number 6489. And this is in your program here, if you'd like to read along. It says, "The nature of the Lord's providence is such that it is linked together with a knowledge of future events. In fact, providence does not exist without foresight. For evil things are foreseen, but good ones are provided. And the evil things that are foreseen are constantly being turned toward what is good by means of the Lord's provident arrangement. Since the divine end, which has good in view, governs everything, nothing is therefore allowed to happen except to the end that something good may come out of it. Nothing is therefore allowed to happen except to the end that something good may come out of it." Can we believe that? Doesn't mean that it's the best thing that could have happened prior to that bad thing happening, because we make choices that bring about bad into this world. And it's not the first choice of the Lord that we do those bad things, or that other people do those bad things, or that accidents happen. But nothing bad is allowed to happen except to the end that something good may come out of it. How do we help that part? So that it's just that it may come, something good may come out of it. We can help good come out of it. In fact, the only way good comes out of bad circumstances is when we participate with the Lord. Because if we think about what the children's talk said, blessed are those who trust in themselves. No, it doesn't say blessed are those. It says that those people are like they're out in a wilderness. They're parched. They're thirsty. They don't have answers. They're hard-packed ground. Blessed are those who trust in the Lord, who are planted by the rivers. And they'll never be anxious in these times. I kind of like that there's this bubble of water to think about us carrying around the Lord's word with us and all of the truths. Like, we're more mobile than plants are. So it's not like we can just plant ourselves down by a river that is just soaking in the Lord's truth. But, we can always carry a Bible around with us. That's something that's always possible. And if we don't have that with us, we probably have memories of Bible verses if we've read them and set them on our heart, so that when we are in times of drought, there's still something to sustain us through those times. But that takes some work sometimes, because even if we are good people, trying to do well, trying to get better, trying to grow spiritually, you're here coming to church. You're hopefully reading the Word. You've got this hope for a better future, hopefully, that the Lord is leading us to. And yet there's work to be done to get to that point. And in our parable, the Lord gives us a few really important keys to dealing with these tougher times, when we feel like the world is coming down around us, like the bad things keep happening and we can't get out of it, and we might feel unhappy, unsatisfied, unfulfilled, or unsuccessful. We might feel depressed or resentful, maybe just bored. Anybody get stuck in just being bored? I think a lot of people in our world right now just are stuck in, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. What's the point of life? There's no meaning in it. Some pretty hard ground that we need to break up. There's an interesting part about this parable that it's a fig tree that's planted in a vineyard. Seems it's a little out of place. It's a fig tree in a vineyard. A vineyard doesn't have figs, it has grapes. So it might sound like this shouldn't be planted in the vineyard, and maybe that's the problem. Cut it down. There are some belief systems that say that once you really start following a spiritual, religious path, all of those natural pleasures, you'll have to give them up. You'll have to get rid of them, because to live this perfect God-fearing life, you are above all of those natural pleasures and allurements. That's not what this is saying. Otherwise, that guy coming along saying, this fig tree in my vineyard has been a problem, cut it down, and the guy would have said, oh yeah, just cut it down. The Lord is trying to tell us in this parable, having this fig tree out of place, to say that no, your natural happiness is a part of what church is supposed to do. Your pursuit of spiritual, good, religious life is supposed to result in your happiness too. But it takes time. And when we start really putting in that effort into our religious life, it can feel like I'm putting in all this work year after year, and I'm just still the same me with the same problems, the same resentments, the same pity, the same frustrations. Maybe we should just stop hoping for natural happiness in church. And I think that's what a lot of us do. Let's give up on the pursuit of religious life, because then we can find natural happiness elsewhere. Let's go find a fig tree that's not in this vineyard. But the Lord is saying, no, give it time. Give it another year. Let me dig around it. I've got a nice dirty pickaxe here. This is when you got some really tough soil and you've got some rocks in there and you got to work through it. There is some hard work that goes into gardening. If you want it to be a fruitful garden, you have to have nice soil. Just having a good plant, you can go to the store and buy a really nice plant and plant it in the ground. I think that'll stay. And plant it in the ground, and if the soil is filled with toxins, it'll kill the plant. If you plant it into a bunch of rocks, it'll dry out and die. We have the parable of the sower that talks about those things. It takes work to prepare the soil. And that's what this parable is all about. We kind of have the combination of the crud in life, mixing with our searching for what is really true in all of it. Searching for the truth that the Lord can provide to make sense of all of the crud. And think about this in plant terms. We put that junk around, the feces, excrement, whatever you want to put it, you put that around and it mixes with the soil. You dig around it and mix it in there. And it churns up the soil, and then the roots have room, and then it's got extra nutrients. The enzymes, everything breaks down, and it's no longer gross stuff. It actually becomes the energy to grow. So there's a patience that we have to have while we're doing this work, that the work in the ground will result in better yields. It will result in good fruit. There's a trust that the work I put in now will matter, even though it's not the season for figs to be growing right now. Perhaps it's the time for planting and tilling and weeding and making sure it's got enough water. And then we wait. Maybe when we get to next year, you can make a decision. Maybe the Lord's saying, let's not make rash decisions while we're in the middle of difficult things, but take it a little bit at a time. Go back to the Word. Yep, your life is going to have its own ups and downs, but let those things mix together. We're not going to go to the Word and just go, there's the answer. It all makes sense. Soak up the Word. Let those roots get down into the soil. Really, read the Word regularly as a part of just expanding. This is what the writings are talking about as spiritual intelligence. The roots spreading out is spiritual intelligence, that willingness to go, I'm going to seek the Lord. In Hosea, there's a great sentence that says, break up your fallow ground. It's time to seek the Lord. What a great sentence. Break up your fallow ground. So, while we're trying to do this, we're breaking up that fallow ground. It's not necessarily the time that we're going to feel the benefits. We're not going to see the fruit on the fig tree. And unfortunately for us, this parable ends with not knowing what's going to happen. We don't find out if this fig tree bears fruit in the end or not. Just like when we're doing the work, we aren't quite sure what the Lord is really leading us to. But we can start asking. We can go to His Word and start finding out. And if we look in our programs, we can look at some of these questions that can help us to till that ground, to tend this plant while we're waiting for that time of new growth and healing. And that's what we're getting to next week, is about the leaves, which is really about the feeling of our own healing, and how when we are being healed, it actually starts to heal others. And then the following week is about fruiting. But while we are in this phase, we might think about, how are we churning things up? How are we becoming patient, more trusting, and just doing the work? We might ask ourselves some of these questions. What good might the Lord want to bring out of this circumstance or situation? That might be the first place. Like, yeah, all of this bad stuff is happening, but instead of just going, this is leading to that bad thing, it's just making things worse, maybe we can go, what good is the Lord trying to lead us to? Maybe. What's some options? Might ask ourselves, am I trying to force anything to happen? Where can I dig around for new answers to my persistent challenges? Have I been stubborn in any specific ways? Think about that stubbornness being like that hard soil, that the water just won't go down in and water the plant. I love this parable because it really does speak directly to, we do deal with junk in our life. It's just true. It's going to come from just circumstantial situations, and it's going to come by other people harming us in one way, shape, or form. It doesn't mean we need to jump to conclusions and judge or figure out how to fix it all, but can we do what this parable asks? Leave it alone a little while. Let it alone. Let me dig around it. Let me fertilize it. And then next year. This is us trying to work with the Lord. What can I get from this circumstance and move into a better place? The Lord will lead us to a better place, and it takes that trust. And that's why our passage from Jeremiah, this one we'll close with, thinking that we should be like trees planted by the water, and our roots will spread out and find. I would like to open and read this so that I don't mess it up. Blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord and whose hope is in the Lord, for he shall be like a tree planted by the waters, which spread out its roots by the river, and will not fear when heat comes, but its leaf will be green, and will not be anxious in the year of drought, nor will it cease from yielding fruit. Amen. Please rise for a blessing.